Welcome to day 4 of my Major Scale Tracker free lessons online. If you'd like to get access to the additional lessons that are available, you can head to clarinet.com. I've got a new tab on there called Videos, and you can check out all the previous free lessons that are available on there. I'm sorry I didn't tune in yesterday. It was Sunday, and after kind of a meh response on Saturday, I kind of chose to just avoid doing this on Sunday. We got up and had breakfast with the family and stuff, and the day sort of went away, and I figured the same was happening to everybody else as well on the weekend there. But we're back at it today. Maybe we'll try and get through 4 boxes instead of 2. We'll see how the time goes. Like I said, if you're new to this, head to clarinet.com. I'll also put a link in the description. You can download your own scale tracker and follow along. So we've currently done 3 scales and arpeggios in the Shalimar register of the clarinet. You can see, just real quick overview, the green boxes are beginner boxes, blue are intermediate, and the black or double black boxes are more advanced ones, right? This is something I'll be going through over the next few weeks, so feel free to keep tuning in. This is intended for beginner clarinetists at this stage, and if you're someone who's at home right now, for various reasons due to this very unfortunate situation in the world, I do hope this will be some help. So feel free at any time to ask questions during this, or even after this has happened. I will tune back in and answer your questions in the comments below. And if you'd like to send me an email instead, you could always do that if you don't want to make it public, some kind of request or question or anything. You can do that at feedback@clarinet.com. If you are new around here, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell icon for notifications if I go live or release any new videos on this channel. And another reason to subscribe is I've got a giveaway coming up real soon from Bakun, which fits into this box right here. So what is in this box? I'll be unboxing it at 2,500 subscribers and showing you what that is. So trust me, there's something really cool in there and you don't want to miss out. Also, I've got more than 130 free podcast episodes now you can check out at clarinet.com. And there's one coming up with Laura Campbell, who's known very commonly as Laura Clarinetist on Instagram. She's got a really huge following on there, and I know a lot of people are really excited about that. We actually had 2 conversations back to back, so they'll be airing hopefully later this week. All right, so let's get into this. Like I was saying, this is the scale tracker. We're moving through it slowly. I think that the pace we're going, it might feel really slow, but that's a sign that this is probably not for you at this stage. This is, like I said, for beginners. So we've been through F major, G major, and B flat major. Those are written keys for the clarinet. And let's just do a quick review of those now, just to practice. It's always important to go through what you did the day before, so you can practice with me if you'd like here. So F major was all the fingers plus the upper far pinky key, which closes one pad, okay? We're just gonna lift the fingers up in order and go down. That's F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, and back, okay? The arpeggio for this one, which we'll play right after, is F, A, C, F, C, A, F. Let's try that scale just to warm up. 1, 2, 3. So there's F. Let's do G major. This one has, starting from here, the low G, all the way up to the high G, and in between we got to remember the middle finger B and the first finger F sharp, all on the way. Arpeggio is G, B, D, G. 1, 2, 3. G major. Let's do the third one. B flat. Remember, this one has 2 flats. One is the first note, and the new flat is always the 4th note, which in this case will be E flat, which we'll play on the side. All right? 1. Oh, and the arpeggio is B flat, D, F, B flat. 1, 2, 3. in my opinion, you really want to make sure you've got those 3 scales down before you move on to any of the stuff that we're going to do today. So if you ran through those and there was a couple mistakes and you weren't quite sure, please take some time, go back and perfect them. But we're going to move on here anyways. Just as a quick thing to say here, thank you so much. Someone sent me a tip the other day for doing these online lessons. If you do find that you're enjoying them, I definitely would appreciate that. I'll leave a link, like I said, down below in the comments. And also, if you don't feel that that's something you can afford right now, I totally understand. That's why I'm doing these for free. But please, if you feel like you get some kind of value, just hit the like button. That helps the YouTube algorithm to find other clarinetists who might find these lessons valuable as well. All right, let's go on for today. So the final 2 scales on the scale tracker here at this level that I've developed is C major and D major, okay? Now C major, you might have wondered, like, why didn't we do C major first? That's the scale that all the band directors especially like to do because it's the concert B flat. It's the one that most bands seem to start on. It's also, if you go to basically any other instrument, it's the one you start on. Why? Because it's all the white key notes. There's no accidentals in this scale at all, okay? There's a couple reasons why not to start with it on clarinet. Again, this is all just in my opinion. This is my teaching methods, so take with it what you want. But I think it's too difficult for beginners to go up right away over the break like that. And this concept of the break, it's such a funny thing because if you're not familiar with what that means and you're a new player, basically the break is the register change on clarinet. And clarinet is kind of a unique instrument in the sense that this is very hard, okay? There's not many other instruments that have registers that are this difficult, but there's a couple reasons for it, okay? The first reason that the break, so-called break, is so challenging on clarinet is because as you go lower on the instrument, the holes actually get a lot bigger, right? So young players with small hands, even just going down to the low F scale like we've been doing, it can be really hard. So observe on your instrument, the top F sharp hole here and the bottom one are significantly different sizes, right? And these holes continue to get bigger and bigger until they're so big that we actually need these levers and touch pieces to cover them, right? This hole's gigantic. This is one of the reasons that when you play bass clarinet, they've got covered holes because they're just so large you couldn't physically close them with your fingers, okay? So now you take a young student who has underdeveloped technique, small hands because they're young, they're not very old, and then you ask them to try and close these holes. A lot of bad habits can develop where they're pressing and trying to get their fingers in there, and it's really difficult to do this. So that's one reason. The holes get bigger, and as you go down, it gets literally harder to do, okay? So you might wonder, well, why does that matter for going higher? Because as we remove fingers on the clarinet, don't we go higher? Well, yeah, but the one thing about going over the break is that you have to put all the fingers down again, all right? And so you're using the full length of the clarinet at a different partial, which we'll go over in a minute. So that's the first reason. The holes get a lot bigger, okay? Now that's kind of related to the second reason that this is difficult, and that is because not only are the holes bigger, but we're using a lot of fingers, okay? So when you go up over the break, you go from using 0 fingers or maybe just 1 finger for the A key, and then all of a sudden you gotta move all your fingers back into position, okay? So a lot of young students, or beginners at any level, I guess, they have trouble with this, okay? So one thing you'll wanna practice is just making sure you look in the mirror or watch your fingers and that you can lift them and set them back at kind of the same height and at kind of the same speed, and that you're not missing or moving or pulling back this way or storing your fingers behind or like this or any number of problems. Because if you lift your fingers up and they end up kind of like that, how are you going to get them back in time when you need them? So just as an example, I'm going to show you what I typically see happening with students. They're trying to learn their C major scale and they look a bit like this. Their hand's back here because they haven't really used it yet. And they can't get it. It's no surprise you can't get it because you haven't figured a lot of the stuff I was just talking about out, right? So my advice for any person who wants to go up and play over the break, and I keep doing this because I really don't want you to get it in your mind that there's some kind of like physical barrier. It's a register change that does exist, but the idea of it being a break is kind of in people's heads, right? If you get a big stream of air going that fills the whole tube or has the potential to fill the whole tube and you control your fingers properly, this idea of this break really goes away and it just turns into a second register. So I prefer to think of it as another register, not as the break that just puts a big sort of gap in people's minds they can't get over, especially students, okay? So what you want to do first is figure out how to play very low and comfortable, starting on those low notes. So if you're playing the low F comfortably, and you can play that without squeaking or honking and get a nice clear note every time, you are definitely on the way to getting these high notes, okay? Now, so the first reason was the hole sizes, the second was the fingers. The third, quite honestly, is sort of what I was talking about with like mindset and airstream and voicing and all that. These are pretty complicated subjects for a beginner. So the biggest thing I like to explain is to think of, instead of this button, this register key button, whatever you want to call it, I prefer register key, I guess. Instead of thinking of it doing something new, think of it as having a subtractive function. And what I mean by that is you might have noticed, or someone might have explained to you before, that when you play a low note on the clarinet, we've got this thing called the harmonic series happening over top, right? So the most basic thing that means is that the clarinet's a very special instrument that skips the octave, okay? So when you're down low, on most other instruments, the first partial you'd hear over top, blending into the sound, will be the next octave above. But on clarinet, we go to what's called the 12th. So this is getting a little more advanced than I originally intended, but basically that note above is sounding when you play the low note. So this is not going to come across on YouTube, but let me just try and see if you can sort of get what I mean. I'm going to play the lowest note on the instrument, an E, okay? And just have a listen for a second. Now if you're getting a big full resonant sound, and you've got a keen ear, you might be able to hear inside of that E, we've got this note happening. So just listen to the E again and see if you can hear the high note within the E. So in the room where I am here, it's really obvious that that's happening. But if you're on YouTube, maybe it's not. So try this with your own instrument. It's kind of like one of those magic eye posters. Once you see it, it's hard not to see it, okay? So think of the register key as subtracting out that low pitch and leaving only the high one, because that's literally what it does. It changes the physics of the tube to prevent the low note from sounding and lets only the upper partial come out and makes it more prominent. So what you're gonna do when you think of the lower notes is don't think of them as kind of something you're reaching for. Think of them as something you've already reached, but you're just taking out part of it, right? So what I would recommend is take your low F from the F major scale, and to prepare to play the high C scale, we're just gonna play that low F, let it settle, and listen for the high C above. I'll just show you kind of those two notes, how they sound. Here's the high C. Now listen to the low note too. We had someone say on the screen here, they could hear it. So I'm wondering, have you ever thought of it that way before? I'm not sure who that was. Kyle. Have you ever heard that before, Kyle? I'm just wondering if you can still comment here. Anyways, here's the low F. I'm going to play the high C as well. So this is the first time Kyle's heard that, so that's really interesting. Here's the low F, sorry. So there's the two notes, the low F and the high C. Here's just the high C. So without any stress, without any effort, without any crazy biting or pinching or blowing extra or anything, we're already making a C within the F. Okay, so now we're just going to use the register key to take out the F, subtract the F, and let the high C speak. Okay, so if you're new to this, the high C is the same fingering as low F. Okay, and all we're going to do, keep the air going, keep everything going exactly the same, just press the register key. Okay, and like I was saying last time, don't move your whole thumb, because then you're going to leak and squeak and all kinds of things. Don't move your fingers, don't tighten your fingers, don't do anything. Just press this, okay? And if it doesn't come out right away, slowly increase a little bit more air until it does, okay? I'll show you how this sounds. So we're going to play the low F for a few counts and then go up to the high note, which is a C. I think it helps to kind of just diminuendo away. Even crescendo a bit through this to help you. And when you can do that really, really comfortably, you're ready to try the high notes, okay? So, you could even try doing this on other notes of the F major scale, you know. One thing to note though, no pun intended, is that as you go up, these overtones get farther away. It's actually a lot more tricky to hear them unless you are having a very, very high range of hearing, which a lot of adults don't anymore, right? So if you're trying to play like a very high note and you want to hear the overtone, you might not. But interestingly enough, this is all what gives the clarinet its sound. Its unique sound comes from this very cool overtone series. So, all right. So that's the first problem we've solved of the three was kind of getting this note out in the first place, right? Now let's talk about the fingers, which was the second problem, and the first problem combined kind of, which is covering the holes, right? So there's two things that you can do here. The first one is, we already practiced the F major scale, all right? So you might want to practice, because remember how we went backwards? We went... We went the scale backwards, okay? Very helpful for beginners who are having trouble reaching the low notes, okay? What you might want to do is try, because the scale is so easy on the fingers, to work on getting down to the low notes. Try doing 1 note down, 2 notes down, 3 notes, 4, 5, and do your whole scale. It'll sound kind of like this. Because this is mostly a finger exercise, don't worry too much about the notes, but if you can think of them, it's all the better, of course, right? So we're going to go like this. Watch. All the way down, okay? Don't worry about speed, but this will get you used to closing your fingers appropriately with notes that you understand, right? Then what you can try to do you go up to the high note at the end, something like that. A really nice little exercise down that's not easy, it's not hard, but it gets you used to these sort of new notes, right? Then you want to just try this, going back F with the thumb, low F, and then up to the high note. This will help. There's many ways to practice this, all right? But that's one of them. That gets our fingers used to moving together down to the F. Why do we have to do that? Well, in the scale that we're about to learn, you have to go actually from an A to an F. So maybe that's something you can practice separately. But let's actually play the new scale a little bit, okay? So that's how you can solve some of the air and finger difficulties and think about it. I hope that helps. Let me know if it does. Let me know if you're confused in the comments. But that's a lot of ways I like to think about it. And you know, one of the great things about teaching is there's so many ways to think about stuff. And if that doesn't work for you, you can always try something else, you know? And there's many other concepts of it too, right? So if you're a very beginner, this next step, we're going to do only the first 5 notes. And I would stick with this for a while before attempting any more, okay? But basically, the C major scale is just going to be C, D, E, F, G, and then back down at first, okay? We're just going to get those those fingers in our fingerings in our hand, and then we'll move on, okay? So this is the first 5 notes. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there's the first 5 notes of C major. If you've mastered that, you can go on to playing the first 6 notes because that ends us up on the A here, okay? Watch this. Remember that all scales are just building by alphabet. C, D, E, F, G. We run out of letters and have to go back. A, right? There it is, okay? Those are the first 6 notes. Now, we're going to attempt to go over the break. There's something called a cheater fingering, which a lot of people use. Well, I don't know if resonance fingering is the word that they like to. And And it's so funny because a lot of people feel that this is cheating. Basically what we're going to do, but cheating is okay if it makes it sound better and it makes it work faster, right? A little bit. It's not really cheating also. Don't think of it as a cheat. It's just a trick maybe, okay? You'll notice with clarinet that when you play open G or A, you can actually put down your other hand and it has negligible effect on the tone. In fact, it might even improve the tone and make it more in tune depending on your instrument. Now, why would this happen? Well, let's check a couple things. So here's an open G. I'm going to close my right hand, including this pad here, the low F. You'll notice that changes the sound a lot when I do that in the timbre of it, right? So by adding the different fingers, now interestingly enough, I find on this clarinet, I don't really need to use these resonance fingerings. I find the open one is very free and vibrant by itself, and adding these kind of makes it more dull. So depending on your instrument, you might want to avoid this, but if you're new, it can still be a helper for now. What we're going to do is when you get to the open G or the A, depending on your instrument and how you feel about this, you can actually put down your right hand in preparation for going over the break, okay? And there's one new fingering we need to learn, and that is to add this left pinky, okay? In fact, we just did a lot of talking, so I'm not going to go back, but one of the normal things I would do here is this exercise we did going down, instead of stopping on the low F, I'd actually try to add one more finger and get down to the low E. So you can figure out that note too. But for now, we're going to play the C with our right hand, and in preparation for that, you're going to kind of keep your pinky on this left lever so that when you need it, you can push it, okay? All right, so basically, what we're going to try now is the first 6 letters of the scale, and when you get to the 6th note on A, let's put our hand down to prepare to go over the break. You can also do this from the G note if you want, but I find that it doesn't really add anything to that note. In fact, it takes too much away, so I tend to just put it down for the A because it sounds a little bit better. But watch this. See that? Where I'm adding that hand down? That's what you want to do. Once you've done that a few times, we can try to go the whole way. And basically the rest of the way on the B note, you're going to add the left hand completely and put this back down here and push this left pinky, leaving this right pinky still down. So you're going to push with both pinkies. It'll look kind of like this. Trying to think too much about watching my hands here. I'm going to move this a little bit. Now do try to perfect that before moving on, okay? But that is a great way to practice going over the break and getting out that C note. Now if this is too struggle, if you're having too much of a struggle with this, keep in mind that this is one of the hardest parts about playing clarinet at the beginning. Literally every person has struggled with this for a really long time, probably for weeks, okay, if not longer. But if you go back to the basics, try and hear into the lower notes, and this will really help, like I was saying before, okay? And remember, you got to sleep on it. You got to practice for a few days before you're going to feel really comfortable. But whatever you do not ever start pinching and squeezing and tightening up and blowing harder and freaking out. It's almost always just a matter of getting your fingers more controlled and getting them to move together, okay? Be very mindful of this and try and practice in a mirror or even like record on a smartphone and watch later. But if you're lifting your fingers up crazy heights and weird places like this, it simply won't happen. It's nothing to do with the reed, nothing to do with the clarinet. It's nothing to do with anything but the fact that you're not going slow enough and thinking about all the stuff that I've talked about, okay? One more kind of note on that before we go on to the arpeggio. You have to think about why it's hard to press your fingers down if they're not coming up to a similar height, right? So imagine an experiment. If I gave you 2 tennis balls and I had you hold them here and I said drop them at the same time so they hit the floor at the same time, what would you do? Well, you would any person would just lift them to the same height and let them go, right? Now, how much harder would that exercise be if I said, okay, take one of the tennis balls in your left hand and hold it 3 feet higher than the right hand, and now try to time them and let them go so they hit the floor at the same time? It's even harder, right? You'd have to somehow calculate this exact timing of the balls, which you just can't do, right? That's like your fingers. If they're all over the place like this, think of how much extra work your brain has to do to make them hit the keys at the same time, right? They're going to be all over the place. And that calculation has to be done times 9. Now imagine you got nine hands with tennis balls, and they're all up at different heights like this, and different places. It's never going to happen, right? So there's certain times in learning technique where you just have to realize that if you don't do it right now and slow it down, you'll never do it right later, because you'll never ever practice this kind of craziness out of your hands. You might actually hurt yourself in the process, right? There's no point in proceeding if you can't make your hands look proper and correct and really play with good technique at a slow speed at these easy levels, okay? It won't go away in a few weeks. Okay, so let's think about now the arpeggio. Remember that the arpeggio is always the first, third, fifth, and octave or eighth note of the scale. So in this case, we've just got C, D, E, F, G, and then C. So C, E, G, C. If you want, you can use that helper fingering to help you out. If you're watching, comment and say hi, and let me know if you have any questions, okay? All right, so we're going to try this. Remember that it's about putting the fingers down together and being smooth, and I'll give you a couple more tips in a second. So let's try the arpeggio for C major. 1, 2, 3. So let's say you tried it and this happened. It kind of didn't really make a sound. Why would that happen? Well, this usually happens for 2 reasons. Maybe you didn't get your fingers down in time. If the fingers go down out of order, so let's say that one hasn't closed yet, it won't make a sound. And then you'll interrupt the next sound, right? So make sure that your fingers are closing correctly, first of all, right? And then make sure to check your air. One of the problems with clarinet is that a lot of students get away with a very weak sound. They sound really thin, really weak, really horrible, and then you can't play high notes because you have no air, right? So make sure you've got enough mouthpiece in your mouth. And also make sure that as you're going up, you want to sustain the amount of air that you're using. Too many people get away with using only this much air when they play the clarinet in the throat tones. And that's why your throat tones sound weak and miserable, because you're not fulfilling the need of the instrument to resonate inside. So when we put down these resonant fingerings, it kind of draws the air down and makes the whole clarinet resonate. But you can't do that if you're only giving it like a very weak amount of air. So the mistake a lot of people make is basically, as you go up, you use less air with the fingers as they go up too. You got to always play air with the potential to fill the whole instrument, okay? If you don't, you can't, right? So what happens is you're playing these notes that are getting a little bit higher and you're using a little less air, you're getting kind of lazy, and then all of a sudden you've put all your fingers down again. How are you supposed to fill the entire clarinet with air that's only this much, right? So always think about blowing down through the whole instrument, getting a nice full sound, and see if that will help you. Maybe what you want to do too is go back to the low exercise and play something like C, E, G, low F, high C, if that helps you get the air in your mind, right? So that sound kind of like this. Obviously that's not an arpeggio, but it maybe is a nice exercise, okay? But try it again. Let's try it one more time. Just making sure to use full air, okay? 1, 2, 3. And there it is, okay? So let's play through the whole C scale, and I think that's good for today. Adding the break is always kind of a tough day. And we'll do D major next time. And then before we move on to the intermediate levels, I've got some really interesting studies and exercises and things to do with these beginner scales before you move on, okay? Again, I hope this has been helpful. If you do appreciate it, please consider subscribing to the podcast for the extended ad-free version for as little as $1 a month at clarinet.com/subscribe. And also, you can leave a tip below if you're really enjoying this. I'm trying to make these freely available for everyone, but I'm also not in schools teaching right now, so it'd be really appreciated if you could do that if you have the means and are interested in helping out. And also, don't forget to subscribe, because I'll be doing a Bakun mystery box giveaway soon on the YouTube channel here, and then you'll get notifications when I do go live for more broadcasts like this. Okay, and don't forget to comment below with any questions. So let's review the C major scale and the C arpeggio. Okay, all together. 1, 2, 3. There it is. Okay, so now when you practice your scales, make sure to review everything. Do everything you did the day before and the days before to actually get it in your hands. But I think for today, we can definitely color in 2 more of these sheets spots on here. So we've got C major in the Chalumeau. Oh, of course, you can download this in the footer. I can't believe it, but I've had 108 people download this chart. So I'm hoping this is really helpful for people, and I'm interested to see where this goes. I never would have expected that many people to really want this. So maybe after we finish this, I'll do a minor one and some other ones as well, okay? If you're looking for new ways to practice this that are a little more interesting, remember last time too I was talking about playing the scales backwards and swinging and all that kind of stuff. We haven't really added tonguing yet, but if you're comfortable, that's something else you could do. You know, go through and just play all the ones that you know. And improvise a bit too if you want. Anyways, next time we're going to add D major, and then after that I'm going to be giving you some actually ear sort of studies and practices you can do with all these scales before we move on that I think you'll find really helpful. So go ahead, download your chart. Any comments I'd love to hear, and I'll see you tomorrow. I'm going to try and do these every day at 11 Mountain Standard Time for the week, and then probably avoid the weekend. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.